Wargaming the 22nd Amendment. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's get down to it. So, there obviously has been a lot of talk about Donald Trump wanting and expressing desire of, being president for a third term. And on its face, it's quite simple that the 22nd Amendment says that no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Well, Professor Lawrence Tribe, who I respect tremendously and listen to, made a couple of statements on Blue Sky where he said this: anyone discounting a third Trump term per the 22nd Amendment and the 12th Amendment is thinking magically. The 22nd Amendment doesn't bar Starr serving a third term, only being elected 3 times. The 12th Amendment doesn't bar running from VP unless ineligible to serve as president. But Trump isn't ineligible. Professor Tribe continues, but Trump should be held ineligible for a reason independent of the 22nd Amendment. Per Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, he's ineligible as an oath-breaking insurrectionist against the U.S. Constitution for trying to upend 2020. In Trump v. Anderson, SCOTUS held only that states couldn't keep him out of their primaries on that basis. Yeah, the Supreme Court didn't go into the substance of whether the ruling from Colorado was substantively correct or not. It just said that, states individually could not keep him off the primaries without showing that he had, been an oath-breaking insurrectionist. So in a way, the court said that the government hadn't brought up the issue of proving, although in the Colorado case it happened, but no other state had the substantive ruling. No other entity held Donald Trump accountable, federal or state, for having violated the disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment. And I think one of the justices during the oral arguments even talked about Congress legislating USC Section 18, Section 2383, which is insurrection against the United States, and the DOJ didn't bring that charge. And so how would you go about proving this ineligibility, as Professor Tribe puts it? Because if we were to go with the language, and Professor Tribe here goes with the language very, very microscopically, and saying that, the 22nd Amendment doesn't bar serving a third term, only being elected 3 times. And as the letter of the law would be, it is just that. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. That itself that's a clear statement, textual statement right there. So we know that Donald Trump cannot run for president a third time because of the 22nd Amendment. However, there is this argument that Donald Trump could run for vice president and then have J.D. Vance run for president, and he would run for vice president. And upon election and presumptive win, he would just take over because J.D. Vance would resign and give him the spot, or they would just swap spots. I mean, first of all, I don't know if JD Vance is that stupid that he would give up the most powerful office in the world if he was at the head of the ticket and if he won, number one. Number two, the 12th Amendment says, the end of the 12th Amendment says, no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. So I think that's what Professor Tribe was talking about. Even that wouldn't bar, because Donald Trump isn't ineligible. But nowhere in the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that says no person shall be president and vice president who, having previously taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So, Professor Tribe rests his argument on the presumption that this attaches automatically. I mean, that has to be litigated whether the 14th Amendment attaches automatically or not, because the Supreme Court really didn't get to that question in the Colorado case. But there is no word that says that in 14th Amendment Section 3 that says this would make the person ineligible. It just says no person shall be president or vice president. It doesn't say anything about eligibility, number one. Number two, you have to substantively prove that they engaged in insurrection. And, despite the fact that the Supreme Court of Colorado did the substantive analysis and found there to be engaging of insurrection, the Supreme Court didn't find that to be, didn't even go to the substance of it, and said that states couldn't unilaterally just keep them off their primaries on that basis. Well, they didn't even go into the basis. And so there has been no adjudication other than the Supreme Court of Colorado that would say that he engaged in insurrection. And if that wasn't enough to stop him from, running for office again and being disqualified automatically, and Congress raising up and saying, no, we can't have this person be qualified because they are de facto disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that could have happened, but that didn't happen. Now talking about the third term, there is no eligibility or ineligibility word in the 14th Amendment, Section 3. And admittedly, there is no ineligibility word in the 22nd Amendment, Section 1 either. It just says, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And the 12th Amendment says, no person shall be constitutionally ineligible to the office of the president shall be eligible for that of the vice president of the United States. So the argument that Donald Trump is not eligible under this 22nd Amendment because he cannot stand for elections for being president, that is an ineligibility. It's not possible for him to run on the election ticket as president. That proves that he's ineligible to be president by way of the 22nd Amendment. And he cannot be in the position of vice president because he cannot be president. If he cannot head the ticket because he's already served 2 terms, he cannot be in the bottom of the ticket either to take the place of somebody who has to take the place of somebody who hasn't served his allotted 8 years that J.D. Vance would have been duly elected to serve. So the argument, I see Lord Stribe's argument, Professor Stribe's argument, but I don't see how the ineligibility factor in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is any more of an ineligibility than the 22nd Amendment, simply because neither of those say it makes you ineligible. But by the nature of what it says, it shows that that person is ineligible. So, with that said, I really don't think that we have to really worry about the legality of the 22nd Amendment. Donald Trump may try the vice presidential path, but that the 12th Amendment blocks him there. But if the Supreme Court agrees with the argument that 22nd Amendment isn't an ineligibility amendment, rather it is just an electability amendment, then what's the purpose of the 22nd Amendment? It frustrates the purpose of the 22nd Amendment, which is to bar somebody who has been elected to serve as president to not serve more than twice. I mean, that is clear word. They can't be elected twice, more than twice. Now, if you can't be elected more than twice at the top of the ticket, why should you find eligibility under the 12th Amendment to serve at the bottom of the ticket? Because the job would entail you taking the top of the ticket should something happen to, in this case, J.D. Vance, if he were president. You know, it's kind of like a hodgepodge thing, but I personally think that the 12th Amendment and the 22nd Amendment do a very strong job of stopping a person from being president more than twice. Now, if the court takes up the argument that Lawrence Tribe says and goes into nitpicking, it'll be about whether it's the 22nd Amendment is about ineligibility or electability, or whether electability of a person is inherently speaks of their eligibility or ineligibility for the position of the president. So there are a lot of questions there, but the argument is strong in favor of Donald Trump not being able to run as either president or vice president. I stand on the side of that argument rather than the side of the argument that says that, you know, the 22nd Amendment really doesn't bar somebody serving a third term. It's word usage, and I mean that's what lawyers do, and I suppose we're going to have to wait and see. I'm sure there's going to be more literature coming out about this, and I'll keep an eye out for that. With that said, thank you so much for listening on this very constitutional topic. I hope I didn't confuse you. And if you have any questions, please put in the comment box. And obviously, like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you soon.